There are sounds that never leave a hospital. They settle into the walls, into the wires, into the skin of everyone who works there. Even after years, even after you leave, you can still hear them when the world outside goes quiet. The slow hum of machines breathing, the sigh of air through a ventilator, the faint click of a nurse's shoes against linoleum. Those sounds were all that remained after the monitor in room 7 went flat. It was 2:47 a.m. when the last beep faded. And for a moment, there was only silence, the kind that doesn't soothe, the kind that accuses. Lara, the night nurse, stood frozen. She had been holding the patient's wrist, feeling the pulse stutter and fail under her fingers. There was nothing dramatic about it. No gasp, no struggle, just absence. She checked again, because that's what nurses do, they double-check the impossible. Then she reached for the sheet and covered the body. Her hands were steady, but her breathing wasn't. The man on the bed had been fighting a losing battle for weeks, a pulmonary fibrosis case that never improved. He was old, kind, the sort who said thank you even when in pain. He died quietly. It should have been easier. It wasn't. Dr. Henrique Costa arrived 4 minutes later. His eyes were already tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't cure. He stood beside the bed, glanced at the monitor, then at Lara. She didn't need to say anything. He looked at the chart clipped to the foot of the bed. Time of death, 2:47, he nodded. The words hung heavy in the air, like humidity before a storm. He signed the form, his pen scratching against the paper. The sound seemed louder than the machines. Then he just stood there. It wasn't his first death. It wasn't hers either. But something about this one felt personal, not because of who the patient was, but because of what he reminded them of. After they finished the formalities, neither left. The room was clean now, silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent light. Lara reached to turn it off. Henrique stopped her. "Leave it on," he said quietly. She was afraid of the dark. She, not he. Lara turned slowly. She, Henrique blinked, confused for a second. "I meant he said quickly. Then added, sorry. Slip of the tongue, but something in his voice cracked when he said it. She didn't push. Hospitals are full of ghosts you learn not to name. They left the room together, closing the door with the kind of care one gives to memory. The corridor outside was empty, a tunnel of half-light and reflections. Only one of the overhead fixtures worked properly, the rest flickered, humming like tired lungs. For a while, they just stood there. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was familiar, like the echo of a shared prayer. Lara finally said, "He was the last one for tonight." Henrique nodded, rubbing his forehead. "Good. I don't think I could take another," she half smiled. "You said that last week too." "Yeah," he muttered. "And I still came back." They started walking toward the nurse's station. The floor reflected their shapes to silhouettes moving in rhythm, their steps quiet, almost synchronized. Halfway down the corridor, Henrique stopped. He turned toward the window at the end of the hall. Outside, the city blinked tiny lights in a sea of black. "Do you ever wonder," he said softly, "how many people die while the rest of the world sleeps?" Lara hesitated. "Every night," she replied. "But I also wonder how many live because of us." He looked at her, and for a moment, his eyes softened. Then something inside him seemed to retreat again, like a tide pulling back before a storm. That night marked the beginning. They didn't plan it. But from then on, every time someone was lost on their floor, they found themselves back in that same corridor after the forms, after the families, after the machine stopped. They would stand there just talking. About coffee, about traffic, about anything that wasn't death. But underneath every word was the same heartbeat of silence, a shared language of grief, a ritual without name. Weeks passed, different patients, different nights, but always the same corridor. The same two figures under the same flickering light. The others began to notice. The cleaning staff, the interns, the night guards. They'd see the doctor and the nurse standing at the far end, talking softly, faces half-lit, half-shadow. No one interrupted. Hospitals understand certain silences. One night, it rained hard. Thunder rolled across the city, and the ward was unusually empty. Lara and Henrique met in the hallway again, the floor gleaming like a mirror. He leaned against the wall, eyes closed. "You ever think about what happens after?" he asked. "After what?" "After they stop breathing," Lara shrugged gently. "I think it depends on who's left to remember." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Then I guess we're the after." For a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside dimmed the power for a second, and the corridor went black. When the lights flickered back, Henrique's eyes were wet though not from the rain. He turned, as if to leave. Then he said, quietly, almost to himself, "She was afraid of the dark too." Lara froze. She wasn't sure if she'd heard right. He walked away before she could ask. The hum of the lights filled the space he left behind, steady and endless, like the sound of a machine keeping something alive that doesn't want to be. There are nights when the hospital feels like it's breathing. You can hear it in the rhythm of the ventilators, in the sigh of doors that never quite close, in the shuffle of shoes that echo through empty halls. It's a slow, tired breath, one that never stops, even when everyone else does. For Lara, that sound became a kind of heartbeat, a reminder that she wasn't alone, even when she was. A week had passed since that night, the one where Dr. Henrique had slipped and said she hadn't asked him about it. Not because she didn't want to know, but because she was afraid of the answer. Silence was safer. In hospitals, silence keeps things from breaking. That night, the coffee machine near the nurse's station sputtered its final sigh. Lara kicked it gently. "Don't you dare die on me too," it gurgled, whined, and then, mercifully, released a weak stream of coffee. She smiled, a rare thing on the night shift. "Talking to machines now?" She turned. Henrique stood at the end of the corridor, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. He looked older than last week, not by years, but by something heavier. "Sometimes they listen better than people," she replied. He half smiled. "Can't argue with that." They sat at the small table by the window, 2 paper cups steaming between them. Outside, the city looked like it was holding its breath, 1,000 lights blurred by fog. Henrique broke the silence first. "You ever think about leaving this job?" She took a sip before answering. "Every week, usually around a.m." He chuckled softly. "Why don't you?" "Because someone has to stay." She looked at him. "Why don't you?" He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, "Maybe I'm waiting for something to make sense again." Lara didn't ask what he meant. She already knew that tone belonged to people who'd lost more than they were willing to say. A few minutes passed before he spoke again. "I used to think saving someone fixed you a little too," he said, "but it doesn't. It just reminds you of all the ones you couldn't." Lara looked down at her hands. "I know." He frowned slightly. "Who did you lose?" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Too many to count." He leaned forward. "I meant outside the hospital." That one caught her off guard. It took a moment for her to find words. "My brother," she said finally. "Car accident. 10 years ago." Henrique nodded, eyes softening. "Was that why you became a nurse?" She almost laughed. "No, I became a nurse because I thought I could outrun helplessness." The coffee had gone cold. Neither moved to refill it. Lara stood, gathering their empty cups. As she turned toward the trash, Henrique said softly, "I had a brother too." She paused. "Had?" He nodded slowly. "Same word you used." She didn't press for details. He didn't offer them. But between those 2 syllables had the silence swelled like a tide. Later, when the corridors emptied again, they found themselves walking the same stretch of hallway, the one that had become theirs. The overhead light flickered, casting brief flashes of shadow over their faces. Henrique stopped near the window, looked out into the dark. "You ever notice," he said, "how grief makes everything glow differently? Even the lights?" Lara nodded. "It changes what they mean." He glanced at her. "And what do they mean to you?" She thought about it. "Sometimes they mean someone's still fighting. Other times, they mean someone's gone." He gave a quiet laugh. "Then I guess I'm the flickering bulb." She smiled sadly. "I think we all are." A long silence followed, not awkward, just full. Then he said, almost to himself, "I can still see her in these halls, Lara turned slowly. He looked at her, realizing too late what he'd said. He exhaled. I'm not drunk, I promise. Just tired. But tired doesn't make you say her. Tired doesn't make you flinch when you do. Lara watched him for a long time. There were stories under his skin, you could see them move when he blinked. She wanted to ask, but she didn't. Instead, she said, "If you ever want to talk, I don't." He interrupted gently. Not yet. They walked the rest of the hall in silence. When they reached the far end, Lara stopped and leaned against the wall. You know, she said, I used to think hospitals were full of endings. But lately, I think they're just full of people trying to start again. Henrique smiled faintly. That's poetic. I'm tired. Same thing, he murmured. The lights buzzed softly above them, their shadows overlapping on the floor. It looked, for a second, like they were standing in the same silhouette. That night, when Lara clocked out, she didn't go straight home. She wandered through the staff lot, the rain still falling lightly. At the far end, she saw a car she didn't recognize. Inside, through the fogged-up window, Henrique sat alone. No radio, no movement, just sitting, hands on the steering wheel, staring ahead. She almost knocked on the glass. Almost. But something about the stillness stopped her. It wasn't despair. It was something else, a man sitting beside a memory he couldn't leave behind. She turned and walked away. 2 nights later, he wasn't at the station. No one had seen him since the shift change. The chief nurse said he'd taken personal leave, no details. Lara told herself not to worry. Doctors disappear sometimes, conferences, rotations, exhaustion. But still, when she walked down their corridor that night, the flickering light felt different. The hum colder, the air emptier. She stood there for a long time, listening to the hospital breathe. Then faintly, from one of the dark rooms down the hall, she heard something, a sound too soft to be real. A voice, whispering her name. Hospitals have their own kind of night. Not the darkness that comes from the absence of light, but the one that grows from the weight of everything unspoken. The kind of night that hums between the walls, filled with all the things that were never said before the machines went quiet. That night, Lara heard her name, soft, barely a breath, like someone remembering how to speak. She froze in the middle of the corridor. The sound came from down the west wing, the older rooms, the ones rarely used. No footsteps, no other voices, just the faint echo of Lara. For a moment she thought she'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation can make ghosts out of ordinary shadows. But then it came again, faint, prolonged, like a memory whispering through walls. She took a step forward, her shoes quiet against the waxed floor. The emergency lights painted everything in pale blue. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Room 9, the one that hadn't been opened since the last renovation. There was a maintenance sign taped to the door, but the tape was old, peeling at the corners. She hesitated, then, with a slow breath, pushed the door open. The air inside was heavy, the kind that hasn't moved in a long time. Dust swirled in the thin light spilling through the blinds. It smelled faintly of alcohol pads and something older, paper maybe, or memory. The room was empty. No patient bed, no equipment, just a single chair by the window. And on that chair a coat, white, folded neatly. Her stomach turned cold. She stepped closer, touched the fabric. It was a doctor's coat, his name still stitched above the pocket. Dr. Henrique Costa. Her breath caught. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this wing. She turned slowly, half expecting to see him in the doorway. No one. Just the faint hum of lights, and the steady sound of her own pulse. A notebook lay on the windowsill, old, leather-bound, the kind that doesn't belong in a hospital. She opened it. Inside were notes written in Henrique's handwriting, some dated, some not. It's strange how silence fills the lungs. She keeps appearing in the corridor lights. Every time someone dies, I see her face again. Lara's hands trembled. She flipped another page. I told her not to be afraid of the dark. I lied. She closed the notebook. The hum in the walls seemed to grow louder. She carried the coat and notebook back to the station. No one was there. The others were in rounds or asleep. She sat down, opened the notes again. The handwriting changed halfway through from firm, deliberate strokes to jagged, rushed lines. I thought the corridor could hold it. I thought if I kept walking it, she'd stop following me, but the lights keep flickering. And every time they do, I think it's her breathing. Lara's throat tightened. The way he described it, the guilt, the images, the sleeplessness, it wasn't just grief. It was something deeper, something that clung to him long after the patient had gone. She turned to the last written page. The date was 2 days before he disappeared. If the lights go out again, I'll know it's time. The lights above her buzzed softly, then flickered. Once, twice. Lara froze. The notebook slipped from her hands. Then the power steadied. The hum returned to normal, but she couldn't shake the chill in her spine. She opened her phone, scrolled through old contacts until she found his number. Her thumb hovered. Then she sent a message. Henrique, I found your notes. Are you okay? The screen stayed blank. Then, after a long minute, delivered. Not read. She stayed past her shift. Even when the morning crew arrived, she couldn't bring herself to leave. The corridor felt different now, like every flicker of light carried a heartbeat that didn't belong to her. When she finally clocked out, she walked the long path past the air, past the lobby, toward the main exit. The morning light was harsh after the pale blue of the wards. At the front desk, a receptionist called out, "Lara, you work nights, right?" "Yes." The woman flipped through a small folder. "This came for you." She handed her an envelope, plain, unmarked, no sender. Lara frowned. "Who left it?" "Guy in a white coat. Said it was for you. Didn't leave a name." She stepped outside, heart pounding. The city was waking up, buses hissing, vendors shouting, traffic pulsing to life. She tore open the envelope. Inside was a single folded page, written in Henrique's handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means I came back. You'll find me where we first met. Don't bring anyone else." Her pulse quickened. She read it again. "Where we first met. Room 7. The room of the man who died 2 weeks earlier. The one Henrique had called she. She didn't even realize she was running until she reached the elevator. The corridor was empty, echoing only her footsteps. Room 7 was dark, the blinds drawn, the bed remade for new patients. She stood at the doorway, catching her breath. The light above flickered once. Then a shadow moved inside. Someone was sitting in the chair by the bed, still, head bowed. "Henrique," she whispered. The figure didn't move. She stepped closer, each breath heavier than the last. When she reached the chair, she stopped. The coat, the hair, the posture. It was him, but his eyes were open. And he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the bed, at the shape beneath the sheet. And on that sheet, in black ink, was a name written in careful letters. Lara M. For a long time, Lara couldn't move. The sound of her own breathing filled the room, louder than the machines that weren't even on. Henrique sat motionless in the chair by the bed, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on the name written across the white sheet. Lara M. The ink looked fresh, not smudged, not aged. Written recently, deliberately. She stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Henrique, what is this?" He didn't answer. His eyes didn't leave the bed. "Henrique," finally he spoke, softly, almost like he was somewhere else entirely. "I thought, maybe if I wrote it down, it would stop happening." Her heart pounded. What would stop? "The dream," he said. "The same one every night." He leaned forward, fingers trembling. "In it, I'm here, always here. The room's the same, the light's the same. Someone's under the sheet, and I'm writing the name before I even see the face. But when I do," he swallowed hard. "It's always you." Lara stared at him, unsure whether to step closer or back away. The fluorescent light flickered, humming in rhythm with her pulse. "It's a nightmare," she said gently. "You've been working too much." He shook his head slowly. "No, it's not just a dream." He reached for the sheet, hands shaking. Lara flinched. "Don't." He hesitated, then pulled it back. The bed was empty, just the cold outline of a body long gone, and a dark stain near the center of the mattress, a faint ring, like something once spilled and dried. See, Lara said, her voice trembling. There's no one here. Henrique's face tightened. That's the problem. They stood there in silence. The hum of the lights grew heavier, denser. Outside, rain pressed against the windows in slow, rhythmic waves. Lara turned toward him. You shouldn't be here. I needed to see it again, he said. Sometimes the only way to understand something broken is to stand where it broke. She took a breath, trying to steady herself. Henrique, what happened to her? He didn't look up. She was my patient. Same diagnosis as the man we lost. Pulmonary fibrosis, progressive, unpredictable. She was young, 34. She reminded me of someone I used to know. Lara frowned. Someone you loved. He didn't deny it. She was improving, or at least I thought she was. We'd gotten close to close. I blurred lines. She trusted me. His voice dropped. And one night, I missed a dosage change. Small, but it mattered. She coded the next morning. He looked at his hands like he could still see the stain. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept showing up. Every night, the same corridor, the same lights. Like maybe the hospital would forgive me if I stayed long enough. Lara sat down slowly, her legs weak. She wanted to be angry, to blame him, but she couldn't. Because she understood what it meant to carry a mistake that breathes beside you every day. I know what it feels like, she said quietly. To lose someone because of what you didn't do. He looked at her sharply. You, she nodded. It was years ago. A patient under my watch, an overdose I didn't catch in time. No one blamed me officially, but her eyes drifted to the floor. I never forgave myself. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was thick with things both had carried too long. Henrique stood and walked to the window. The city lights blurred against the rain-streaked glass. You know what's strange? He said. After she died, I kept walking this corridor every night. I thought it was habit. But now I think I was waiting. For what? For someone else who understood. She joined him by the window. For a second, their reflections merged on the glass, two faces layered by the same fatigue, the same quiet ache. The intercom crackled suddenly, making them both jump. A voice came through, flat, routine, clinical. Attention staff. Patient admitted to Ward C, room 10. Pulmonary fibrosis, acute. The words hung in the air like a prophecy. Lara turned to Henrique. He stared back, his expression unreadable. That's the same diagnosis, she said. He nodded slowly. I know. You can't. I have to. He interrupted. She deserves better this time. They walked down the corridor together, the hum of the lights following them like a heartbeat. The hallway looked longer than usual, as if the building itself was stretching towards something inevitable. At room 10, Lara paused at the door. Do you want me to come in? Henrique nodded. Please? Inside, a young woman lay unconscious, an oxygen mask covering half her face. The chart by her bed read, Camila Duarte, age 32. Lara felt her stomach twist. Even under the tubes and tape, the resemblance was striking. Not identical, but close enough to stir something deep in both of them. Henrique moved to the bedside, gently checking the monitors. He whispered, she even breathes like her. Lara didn't know what to say. They spent the rest of the night in silence, checking vitals, adjusting machines, doing everything they'd failed to do once before. Each beep of the monitor was a heartbeat from the past, each breath from the patient a small forgiveness they hadn't earned. When dawn came, the girl's stats stabilized slightly. Lara smiled faintly. Maybe this time. Henrique shook his head. Don't say it. Not yet, she nodded. Superstition in medicine isn't about luck, it's about fear. The fear of believing again. As the morning light bled into the corridor, Henrique gathered his coat and turned to leave. Go home, he told her. Get some rest. She wanted to protest, but the weight of the night pressed too heavy on her bones. He looked at her once more before walking away. The exhaustion in his face had changed. There was something else now. Resolve, or surrender. When Lara woke later that evening, she checked her phone. One message, from an unknown number. If anything happens to me, tell her I tried. No name. no context, but she knew. She threw on her coat and ran back to the hospital. The corridors were dim again, lights buzzing like trapped bees. She reached room 10. The bed was empty. A nurse passing by said, "They moved her. Cardiac arrest an hour ago." Dr. Costa took her down to observation himself. Lara froze. Her chest tightened. Something was wrong. The observation ward was closed at night. No one went there anymore. No one but ghosts. She turned toward the stairwell and ran, the sound of her footsteps chasing her own breath, the lights flickering one by one behind her as if the hospital itself was following. The stairwell smelled like dust and old metal. Every step Lara took echoed upward, chasing her own breath through the empty shaft. The hospital above was still alive, humming, breathing, but down here, the air felt different. Older, forgotten. The lower levels hadn't been used in years. Maintenance had sealed them off after a flood, or so people said. But stories spread like mold in hospitals. People claimed lights still flickered down there, machines still hummed on their own. No one went to check. Lara reached the basement corridor. The sign above the door read "Observation Ward." Letters faded and cracked like an old scar. She pushed the door. It opened too easily. The hallway beyond was cold and narrow, lit only by half-dead bulbs that buzzed softly, casting thin slices of light across peeling paint. A wheelchair stood abandoned against the wall, its wheels rusted in place. Somewhere deeper inside, a faint beeping echoed, steady, distant, familiar. The sound of a heart monitor. She followed it. The corridor bent left, then right, until she saw a faint glow spilling from one of the rooms. She stopped at the doorframe, heart pounding. Inside, Henrique sat by a bed, head bowed, one hand resting on the arm of an unconscious patient. "Camila." The monitor beside her pulsed weakly, a steady but fragile rhythm. "Henrique." He didn't look up. His voice, when it came, was hoarse. She stopped breathing. "I couldn't wait for a team. You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "This place, it's not even cleared. The power's unstable, I know." He finally looked up. The shadows under his eyes were darker than the room itself. "But she needed quiet." "Quiet?" She reminded me of her. Lara's chest tightened. "Of the woman you lost." He nodded. "She always said she hated the noise, the alarms, the footsteps, the constant hum. Said it made her feel like she was dying before she was gone. So I brought her here, where it's quiet." Lara stepped closer. "Henrique, this isn't healing. This is hiding." He smiled faintly, without joy. "Sometimes they're the same thing." For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint, rhythmic beeping of the monitor, a pulse in the dark. Then Camila's breath caught. The machine flatlined for half a second, then resumed, slower this time. Lara moved instinctively, checking the leads, adjusting the oxygen. "Her levels are dropping. We need to get her upstairs." Henrique didn't move. "She's not ready. She'll die if we wait." "She already did," he said softly. Lara froze. "What?" He looked at her, not with madness, but with something worse. Acceptance. "She died 30 minutes ago." Lara's stomach dropped. "That's not possible. I can see her breathing." "She's not," he said. "The machines don't know yet." The monitor continued its slow, hypnotic rhythm. Lara turned toward it and saw that the pulse line wasn't coming from the sensor on Camila's finger. The wire wasn't connected. She took a step back. "Henrique, what did you do?" He didn't answer. He just looked at the bed, eyes filled with something that looked like mercy twisted into despair. "I didn't hurt her," he said finally. "She just stopped. I tried to bring her back." But he stopped, his voice cracking. "I think the hospital didn't want her to leave." Lara's hands shook. "You're not making sense." He stood slowly. "Am I not?" "Look around." The walls seemed to hum now, the faint vibration of old wiring or something deeper, a pulse beneath the plaster. "The lights," he whispered. "They always flicker when someone's about to go, as if on cue." The bulb above them dimmed, then flared again. Lara's breath hitched. "It's grief, Henrique. It's projection." He smiled sadly. "Then why do you feel it too?" She wanted to argue, but deep down, she did feel it, the slow, aching weight pressing against her chest, the pulse in the walls that wasn't mechanical. The hospital was breathing again. Henrique turned back to the bed, brushing a strand of hair from Camila's forehead. She looks peaceful, doesn't she? Lara hesitated. Henrique, we have to go. He didn't move. Go if you want. I'm staying. She took his arm, but he pulled away sharply. Don't, he said. His tone wasn't angry. It was pleading. If you take her, I'll lose her twice. Lara felt tears burn at the corners of her eyes. She's gone. He shook his head. Not yet. The monitor spiked suddenly, a single, sharp beep that echoed through the corridor. Both of them turned. The waveform jumped once more, then again. Camila's chest rose faintly. Her fingers twitched. Lara gasped. Henrique, he didn't move, didn't breathe. He just stared. The pulse steadied. Then her lips parted, and a faint exhale escaped. Her voice hoarse, broken, barely human, whispered a single word. Doctor. Then the lights went out. The darkness was absolute. Lara's heart pounded so loud it filled the silence. She fumbled for her phone flashlight. When it flicked on, the bed was empty. The chair was overturned. Henrique was gone. She spun around, the beam shaking in her hand. The door was still open beyond it. The corridor stretched endlessly, a tunnel of dim flickers, every other bulb pulsing like a dying heartbeat. She took a step forward. Henrique, no answer. Another step. Camila, nothing. Then, from far down the hall, a light blinked on, just one, illuminating a door she hadn't noticed before. It was marked Room 1, the first room of the observation ward, the one no one ever entered. She walked toward it, each light above her flickering out as she passed. By the time she reached the door, the corridor behind her was dark. She placed her hand on the handle. It was cold, too cold. Inside, something moved. A shadow crossing in front of another light. A sound slow, deliberate. Footsteps. Then, softly, a voice. I told you not to come here. She recognized it instantly. Henrique. But when she opened the door, the room was empty. On the bed lay another sheet, fresh and white. And across it, in the same dark ink as before, a new name. Dr. Henrique Costa. For a moment, Lara couldn't breathe. The white sheet glowed faintly under the flickering light, the name written across it bleeding into the fabric. Dr. Henrique Costa. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She looked around, expecting him to step out of the shadows, to explain it, to laugh, to be real. But the room was empty. Utterly, terribly empty. The walls smelled of antiseptic and old air. The corners were dark enough to swallow movement. There were no machines, no monitors, only that single bed, and the echo of her own heartbeat. She backed away slowly, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were telling her. No, she whispered. This isn't. Then the door slammed shut behind her. The sound tore through the silence. Lara spun around, yanking the handle. It didn't move. She hit it once, twice, metal against palm. Henrique, she shouted. Nothing. Her phone screen glowed in her hand. No signal, no bars. The air grew colder, and somewhere in the darkness, something began to hum. At first it was low, barely perceptible, like the vibration of a faraway generator. Then it grew, spreading through the walls, a pulse that seemed to come from the building itself. It wasn't noise, it was rhythm, a heartbeat. Lara pressed her back to the door, trying to steady her breathing. She whispered to herself, it's stress, just stress, hallucinations, fatigue. But the hum didn't stop. It synced with her pulse, slow, deliberate, insistent. And under it, faintly, she heard another sound. Footsteps, soft, dragging, as though someone was walking in slippers down a hospital corridor. The rhythm was unmistakable, the sound she'd heard every night since this all began. She turned the flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. The beam shook in her hand. Then, behind her, the monitor blinked on. There was no patient, no electrodes, no wires, but the screen showed a pulse. Steady. She stepped closer. The waveform jumped once, then twice, then flattened. On the screen, letters began to form. Not numbers. Letters. Lara. Her breath caught. No. The pulse spiked again, beating harder, until the monitor screamed a long, flat tone, then shut off. Darkness swallowed everything again. Lara stumbled backward, the flashlight catching something on the floor. Footprints. Wet. Leading away from the bed. Not hers. She followed them to the far wall. There, half hidden behind peeling paint, was a door she hadn't noticed before. Smaller, narrower than the others. Unmarked. When she touched the handle, the hum in the wall stopped. Silence. Complete. She hesitated, then opened it. It led to a service hallway, narrow, low-ceilinged, filled with old equipment and rusted gurneys. Somewhere down the corridor, a light was flickering. It wasn't electric. It looked warmer, like candlelight. She walked toward it slowly. Every few steps, she saw something: a broken name tag, a discarded glove, a medical chart soaked and unreadable. The flickering glow grew stronger. She turned a corner and stopped. At the end of the hallway stood Henrique. He was facing the wall, hands pressed flat against the tile, as if listening for something beneath it. A faint golden light spilled from a crack near his shoulder. His coat was torn. His voice was low, hoarse, but calm. "I told you not to come." Lara took a step forward. "You disappeared, Henrique." "I thought." He turned. The look in his eyes stopped her. Not madness. Something quieter, like a man already half gone. "I had to finish it," he said. She wasn't at peace. None of them are. She glanced at the wall. The light flickered through the crack again, a pulse of gold leaking through the plaster. "What is that?" He smiled faintly. "The heart of it. The old ward. They built this place on top of the first one. What are you talking about?" He stepped aside. Through the crack, she saw something moving: shadows of people lying in beds, machines that shouldn't be working, a faint rhythm of breathing that wasn't coming from air vents. "The hospital remembers," Henrique whispered. "It keeps them. All of them." Lara shook her head. "That's impossible." He looked at her with something like pity. "Then why can you hear it too?" She realized, suddenly, that she could. Beneath the hum of the walls, beneath her own heartbeat, a low, steady rhythm. Breaths. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Everyone slightly out of sync, like an orchestra of lungs playing the wrong note. Her knees weakened. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "I don't want anything," Henrique said softly. "They do." A sound came from behind the wall, metal scraping tile, like a bed being moved. Then another, and another. The rhythm grew louder, until it became a single, collective sigh. The lights flickered, and the golden glow began to dim. Henrique stepped closer to her. "When you work in a place long enough, you start to think it belongs to you. But it doesn't. You belong to it." He reached for her hand. His fingers were cold, trembling. "I brought you here because you can help me finish it." "Finish what?" He met her eyes. "The list." She followed his gaze to the far wall. There, beneath a cracked panel of glass, was a corkboard, old, stained, filled with names. Each one handwritten, each one marked with a small black line through it. At the bottom, 2 spaces were empty. 2 pens lay beside it. Henrique picked one up and handed it to her. "Everyone who doesn't leave this hospital goes here," he said. "That's how it remembers them." She looked at the names. Some she recognized: patients. Others, co-workers. Doctors who'd quit. Nurses who'd burned out. "This is insane," she whispered. "Then walk away," he said. "But you'll hear it follow you." The hum in the walls returned, louder this time, pressing against her skull like static. She clutched the pen, wanting to throw it, wanting to scream. Instead, she looked at the empty spaces again, and she realized something. The order of the names, they weren't random, they were chronological. And the last one written before the blanks was Camila Duarte. Her breath caught. "Henrique, what happens when the list fills?" He smiled, tired, sad, unafraid. Then the lights stopped flickering, the golden glow faded behind the wall. The hum began to slow, like a heartbeat running out of rhythm. Henrique looked at her, eyes glassy, voice barely a whisper. "Write mine." "What? You found my name on the sheet. Now put it where it belongs." She shook her head. "No." He reached for her hand again, closing her fingers around the pen. "Please, it's the only way the corridor lets go." She felt tears blur her vision. "I can't." "You can," he said. "You always could. You just didn't want to be the one to close the door." The lights above them began to flicker wildly, casting bursts of light and shadow across his face. He smiled once more, the kind of smile people make when they've stopped fighting. Then he whispered something she barely heard. It wasn't her name. It wasn't his. Just 2 words. Thank you. The light flared and he was gone. Only the coat remained on the floor, the fabric faintly warm. Lara stared at the board, at the 2 empty lines. The hum in the walls softened, like the hospital was waiting. She lifted the pen. Her hand trembled as she wrote, Dr. Henrique Costa. The moment the ink touched the board, the lights steadied, the flicker stopped, the hum quieted. For the first time in weeks, the corridor was silent, but when she looked back, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Beneath the board, etched into the wall in tiny, uneven letters, was another list. Faded, older, and at the very bottom of it the last name carved, almost erased by time, Lara M. The silence felt heavier than any sound. It pressed against Lara's ears, so complete that she could hear the blood moving inside her own head. The corridor no longer hummed. The lights no longer flickered. Everything was still to still. She stared at the carved wall, at the name that should not have been there. Lara M. The letters were uneven, old, their edges filled with the dust of years. She traced them with her fingers, half expecting the wall to be cold. It wasn't. It was warm, like skin. For a moment she stood there, trying to remember. Had she ever seen that carving before? Had she walked this hallway before Henrique, before the night shifts, before everything began to fall apart? Fragments came in flashes, the reflection of her own face in a corridor mirror, a voice whispering her name in an empty room, the flicker of lights that seemed to follow her wherever she went. She closed her eyes. The images came faster now, like someone else's memories playing through her own mind. A door opening, a hand gripping hers. A sound, the flat line of a monitor. Then nothing. She turned back to the board. Henrique's name was still wet on the paper, but his pen, his coat, his presence all gone. She picked up the coat, clutching it to her chest. The faint scent of disinfectant and coffee still clung to it. Henrique, she whispered, the word breaking as it left her mouth. The hospital didn't answer, but somewhere deep in its walls, a light blinked once as if acknowledging her. She walked back through the narrow corridor, past the gurneys, the peeling paint, the faint gold light that no longer glowed. Every step felt heavier than the last. The hum hadn't returned, but she could feel something watching, not malicious, just aware. When she reached the main hallway of the observation ward, she stopped. The first sheet, the one with Henrique's name, was gone. Only the empty bed remained, the pillow dented as if someone had just risen from it. On the wall above the bed, a faint sentence was scrawled in black ink. Some lights never turn off. She made her way to the stairs, each flight steeper than she remembered. The higher she climbed, the brighter the lights became too bright. The sterile fluorescence gave way to a pale, unnatural glow that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. When she reached the top floor, the hospital was empty. The desks, the monitors, the rooms, everything was clean, silent, untouched. She walked down the main corridor, past the nurse's station, past the vending machine that no longer buzzed. The world felt paused, like she was walking through the memory of a place, not the place itself. Then she saw it. At the far end of the hallway, the same light, the flickering one, the one that had washed over every conversation, every death, every silence. It was steady now, warm, almost golden. Under it stood a single chair, and in that chair her own uniform, folded, neat. Lara stopped. Her throat tightened. She stepped closer, the soles of her shoes echoing too loud in the quiet. A small tag hung from the collar. Her name, her handwriting. She reached for it. Her hands shook. The fabric was cold. Then, from behind her, a voice. You finally came back. She turned. It was Henrique, standing a few meters away, the same calm expression, the same soft tone, but something about him was different. Lighter, as if he was no longer carrying weight. Lara took a step toward him. You're here. I told you the corridor never forgets. You're not real, she said, half a plea, half a warning. He smiled faintly. Maybe not. Or maybe this is the only place we ever were, She shook her head, clutching the uniform to her chest. This is impossible. I am still working here. I've been working, he asked gently. When was the last time you went home? Her mind raced. She tried to remember her apartment, her keys, the last morning she'd left the hospital. She couldn't. The images blurred, sliding away like water from glass. She staggered back. No, I remember, but she didn't. Not clearly. Only corridors. Only lights. Only the sound of machines. Henrique stepped closer, his expression kind. The hospital doesn't keep everyone, he said. Only the ones who can't leave yet. I don't understand. Yes, you do. She met his eyes and saw it there. Not pity, recognition. The way you look at someone when you've both carried the same wound along. You wrote my name, he said softly. But it was already there. You were part of it before me. Lara's vision blurred. Her body felt weightless. A dull ringing filled her ears. I don't remember dying, she whispered. Most of us don't, he replied. It's not the moment that keeps you here. It's what you didn't let go of. Her knees buckled. He caught her before she fell. His touch was warm now, not ghostly, not distant, real. You stayed, he said. For them. For every patient you couldn't save. She nodded weakly. I thought if I stayed long enough, I'd learn to do it right, he smiled. You did. You learned to stay. The lights above them dimmed again. But not like before, not flickering. Softly, gently, like a sunrise in reverse. The corridor seemed to stretch further, its walls fading into a pale haze. The hum returned, quiet, low, steady. Not mechanical anymore. Human. Alive. Lara looked around. The doors along the hallway were open now. In each, she saw figures: nurses, doctors, patients. Some she remembered, others she didn't. All moving in slow, silent rhythm, their faces calm. Who are they? She asked. The ones who made peace, Henrique said. They still walk the corridors until someone remembers them. She turned to him. And when they're remembered, he looked past her, to the light at the end of the hall. Then they go. She hesitated. Is that what happens now? You're leaving? He smiled. I think so. And me? You still have someone to talk to, he said softly. The living need stories. The ones like us just need someone to tell them. He stepped back, the light behind him growing brighter. Thank you for listening. Henrique waited, but he was already fading, his outline dissolving into the warm glow. When the light faded, Lara was alone again. The corridor stretched empty and endless before her, but it no longer felt heavy. It felt awake. She sat in the chair beneath the steady light, the uniform folded in her lap. For the first time, she realized how tired she truly was. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and listened. The hum was soft now, almost like breathing. Somewhere far away, she heard footsteps, the sound of the morning shift beginning, the world continuing. She smiled faintly and whispered to the air, as if the walls could hear her, the hospital doesn't forget. It just waits for us to learn how to go on. But as her eyes closed, a flicker of light caught the far end of the hallway. A shadow moved there, slow, deliberate. A new figure, a young nurse, carrying a chart, looking lost. Lara watched silently as the girl stopped under the same light, looked around, and sighed. Then, softly, the girl whispered into the empty air, "Hello? Is anyone still here?" The hum of the hospital was back, soft, even, almost gentle, like the sound of the world remembering to breathe. Lara sat beneath the same light, the folded uniform resting on her lap, her reflection faintly mirrored in the polished floor. She could feel the hospital settling around her, the quiet shuffling of air through vents, the slow exhale of distant machinery waking for another day. Everything was the same, and yet different. Lighter. She didn't know how long she'd been there. Time in hospitals was never real, just a collection of lights turning on and off. But when the footsteps came, she knew. The shift had begun again. The girl's shoes squeaked against the floor. She walked slowly, her gaze darting from door to door, uncertain but curious. Lara recognized that look, the mix of exhaustion and wonder, of someone still believing that hospitals were places meant only for healing. The girl stopped under the same light, the one that had flickered for weeks, then steadied the moment Lara wrote Henrique's name. She reached out to touch it, as if testing its warmth. "Hello," the girl said softly. Her voice trembled slightly. "Is anyone still here?" Lara smiled faintly, though no one could see it. The corridor answered with a low, comforting hum, the kind that only those who listened long enough could truly hear. The girl turned, looking toward the empty nurse's station. A faint breeze brushed through her hair, lifting a loose strand. Something someone whispered back. Not words, just the rhythm of light, the subtle pulse of presence. The girl's eyes softened. She didn't run, didn't call out. She simply listened. Down the hall, one of the monitors blinked on no patient connected, no power surge, just a steady, rhythmic heartbeat. The girl frowned, stepped closer, reading the waveform as if it might spell meaning. The green line pulsed softly across the screen, and beneath it, in small digital letters, appeared a single message. "Welcome to the night shift." The girl blinked, then smiled. She looked around, saw nothing, heard nothing, but the air felt alive. She whispered, half to herself, "All right. Let's get to work." The hum followed her as she moved from room to room, checking empty beds, straightening sheets, tidying small things no one would notice but her. A ritual without purpose, but with peace. Every so often, she thought she saw movement, a reflection in a darkened window, a white coat passing behind a glass door, a soft light blooming in a room just as she turned away. None of it frightened her. The opposite, it felt right. As though the hospital wasn't haunted, but simply inhabited by memory. In the West Wing, she found a chair by the window. Someone had left a notebook there, leather-bound, old, edges worn smooth. She opened it carefully. Inside, the handwriting shifted from neat to uneven, from old ink to newer strokes. Names, dates, thoughts. The last entry caught her eye. It was written in a calm, rounded script. "The hospital doesn't keep the living. It keeps the ones who can't say goodbye." The line below it read, "If you're reading this, you already know how to listen." She ran her finger across the ink, feeling the indentation of the words. Something about the handwriting felt familiar, warm, patient, feminine. Lara's handwriting. A breeze moved through the corridor, lifting the edges of papers, turning a single page of the notebook. There, in smaller letters, another message. "Don't be afraid of the lights. They're just memories learning how to breathe again." The girl closed the notebook gently. She looked out the window. Dawn was breaking, soft gold spilling across the city like quiet forgiveness. The hospital bathed in that light, every window glowing faintly, like hundreds of tiny hearts beating together. For the first time, the girl felt the beauty in its silence. Meanwhile, somewhere deeper in the building, a door clicked open. Room 1, the observation ward. A faint light glowed from inside, steady, golden. Within it, two silhouettes stood side by side. Henrique and Lara. They weren't ghosts. They weren't memories. They were the echo of compassion, the lingering warmth of those who refused to stop caring. They watched the girl through the glass, not speaking, just present. Henrique turned to Lara. "She reminds me of you." Lara smiled softly. "She reminds me of us." The golden light around them pulsed once, as if the building itself sighed. Henrique looked toward the corridor beyond the door. "Do you think she'll stay?" "Maybe," Lara said. "Maybe not. But if she listens, the hospital will show her the way out." He nodded slowly. "And us?" Lara looked down at the folded coat in her hands, his coat, and placed it gently on the bed beside her. "I think we've stayed long enough." The light above them grew brighter, spilling into every corner of the room. Dust turned to gold. The hum of the walls shifted, pitch no longer heavy, but clear and resonant. As the glow enveloped them, their outlines softened, like breath on glass. Lara reached for Henrique's hand. "Do you hear that?" He smiled. The morning shift, and together, they stepped into the light. In the corridor above, the girl looked up, suddenly feeling a strange warmth on her skin. The lights flickered once, then steadied, perfectly even. She turned toward the window, watching the sunrise paint the walls in quiet amber. For a heartbeat, She thought she saw two figures reflected there, a nurse and a doctor, standing side by side. Then the image dissolved into light. She exhaled, her chest tight but calm. "Whoever you were," she whispered, "thank you for staying." Outside, the city came alive. Ambulances rolled in. Patients were wheeled through glass doors. The hospital began another day. Inside, everything was as it should be, busy, loud, human. The corridor lights burned steady. No flicker, no hum. Just the soft, living sound of motion. And in the West Wing, on a windowsill near the nurse's station, the notebook waited. Its pages fluttered slightly in the morning air. On the open page, 2 new words had appeared, written in the same looping hand as before: "The corridor remembers."